To Market on Close, I'm Marley Caden here in Chicago alongside Sam Vadas in Washington, D.C. today. We've had a very busy afternoon with lots to discuss, so we'll break away from our usual takeaway format and take a look at some of the news we've gotten in the last few hours. The Federal Reserve approved its second straight interest rate cut today. The 25 basis point cut was widely expected, but came despite a near data blackout because of the government shutdown. The Fed also announcing it will end quantitative tightening on December 1st. Sam, we saw a reaction, a real move to the downside in the markets. I'd love to know some of your takeaways from Jerome Powell's speech, and the tone that he was taking.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. It was that question from one of the journalists there in that press conference, which was about how uncomfortable they might be with the stock market pricing in of further rate cuts, and particularly with regards to December. And he said it's not a foregone conclusion, basically putting a huge question mark over that now as to the future path of those rate cuts, particularly with regards to the pricing in that we've seen in the market. So further cuts not guaranteed right now. So very much leaving the door open. And that was taken as slightly hawkish. Now, it's interesting because I'd been speaking to a global FX strategist earlier from Macquarie Group, that is Terry Wiseman, this morning, and he said that really it is Powell's job to try to dissuade the market expectations of aggressive rate cutting. And so we did, of course, see equities coming off a little bit off the back of that, and then we also saw the dollar higher. So I suppose, this was an interesting press conference that maybe not everybody expected, given that the markets very much got what they wanted with that rate cut. But I suppose we'll have to see the reaction. And, they are data dependent, whether people like it or not. So, data dependent Fed without a huge amount of data, they have to approach cautiously, I suppose, is the big thing right now. But what did you take away from some of the earnings that we just broke, Marley?
Very interesting. With the people we were speaking to, everybody sort of had a different candidate of who the catalyst could be to the downside. But resoundingly, I was hearing Alphabet as people's positive catalyst. And they performed very well. It was a great report for them. Record sales of $102 billion. They were up, 16%. CapEx spending up. It's kind of all the things that everybody was looking for in that report. Shares still trading about almost 5% higher for Alphabet, but Meta under some pressure, down about 8.5%. Microsoft down 3%, but likely looking for some guidance there from Microsoft. How about you?
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. It's almost like Alphabet was going to be the star student here. It came in with straight A's. That's sort of how it feels right now. And that's because a lot of the analysts had sort of anticipated that this would be really in a sweet spot heading into this earnings report, and that it was really well positioned, particularly on the CapEx, and showing proof of some of that monetization as well. So let's see what happens on all these calls, particularly because we got a little bit of a mixed report from Meta, and then obviously Microsoft is having a few issues with this whole Azure outage as well. But I thought it was really interesting as far as some of the retail takeaways as well. I mean, Brian Nickel effect seems to be happening, certainly as far as some of the same-store sales at Starbucks, but maybe not so much for Chipotle, which, of course, he moved on from. But as far as what's on the docket for tomorrow, another huge day for us. But what will you looking out for, Marley?
Of course, Apple and Amazon is what we'll be watching. Apple, it'll be this big conversation about where it fits in the AI race, especially as they hover near that $4 trillion market cap. For Amazon, likely going to want to see that growth in the cloud unit, especially from the numbers that we got from Google today. How about you, Sam?
Well, look, tonight, obviously, after these earnings, the next event risk on the horizon is going to be this meeting between President Xi and Trump. I believe it's going to be happening about 10 p.m. Eastern, and it's going to be about 3 to 4 hours to allow for some of that translation. There is so much at stake here. So, of course, we will be looking across all those headlines tomorrow morning and the reaction in the market, Marley.
And we'll have all of it on an extended show tomorrow on Market on Close, but that's going to do it for us today. For Sam Vadas, I'm Marley Caden.